Live.
All right, good morning.
Good morning, good morning. I'm gonna let you have this seat.
As you can see, it's morning and we're still getting organized and there's too much traffic this morning.
My goodness.
All right, give us a second here while we move around our chairs. Good morning, Tamala.
Wow, so sorry.
Hey, no worries, we're just getting started.
Okay.
All right, so welcome to the latest in the series of webinars brought to you by Smart Reading. We appreciate you joining us. And this morning, we're going to be talking about the Oregon State of Literacy. As we kick off year 28 for our Smart Programming year, we thought it might be a good time to take a little bit of a dive into what's going on in the state of literacy, especially early literacy, and how do we fit into that mix? So before we get started, I want to introduce you to the folks who will be joining me in the conversation this morning. I'm Chris Otis. I'm the Executive Director for SMART, and I'm also a very proud SMART reader. And to my left is Kendra Allen, our Senior Program Manager from North Portland. Kendra, do you want to add any background?
Sure, yeah. I come from a volunteer of SMART down in Eugene, Oregon, and I've now been working with SMART for about a year and a half.
And sitting next to Kendra is Tamala Newsome. I'm a personal big fan of Tamala, who is a recently retired principal from Rosa Parks Elementary and a longtime advocate for SMART.
Absolutely.
Do you want to add any background?
Just good to be here this morning. Thank you for having me. And it's just a privilege to be in a conversation about SMART and the great work they do for our schools each and every day, all the volunteers.
Thank you. And that's just a little bit of a preview about why we love Tamala and our principals who are such wonderful advocates for our work. And to Tamala's left is Afrida Davis, who is our new program director. And Afrida's going to offer a brief introduction and then she has to pop out to another meeting, but you will be seeing more of her in future webinars. Afrida.
Great. Yeah, thank you, Chris. Good morning, everyone. Like Chris said, my name is Afrida Davis. I have been with SMART for a whole 6 weeks now, so super new, learning a lot of really amazing things. This is my first foray into literacy for youth, and I'm very excited about learning because I'm a lifelong reader, and so being able to help increase literacy rates and serve our younger population really feeds my soul. I have a background in working with teenagers, so it's a bit of a leap for me. I come from working in high schools, doing after-school program for 9th through 12th graders, and youth are I've dedicated my life to serving young people. I'm also a veteran of a foreign war, and I'm from the Midwest, as a lot of people in Oregon are from. And that's all that I have to share about myself. Yeah.
All right, Afrida, we're glad you're here.
Yes.
All right, so let's take a look at where we're going to go this morning in our conversation. As soon as our slide deck moves here to the next slide. All right. And before I drill through sort of what we want to talk about, I do want to just offer a couple of comments that we are going to be having some conversation here about early literacy and elements of that and the SMART in that ecosystem. But we also would very much like this to be as dynamic of a conversation and interactive of a conversation as possible. So you do have the opportunity to ask questions at the end of the webinar, but we'd love to hear from you throughout. So we would enjoy answering your questions in real time, so feel free to toss them out there. All right, so this morning we're going to take a little bit of a look at Oregon's early literacy landscape and why SMART reading matters and how we fit into that. Talk some about SMART reading through the years, so that many of you have been with us for a number of years and may in fact know a lot about our 28-year history, but we'd love to share a little bit of the additional detail about how our program has always worked to stay very relevant and responsive to the needs of our youngest students. We do want to talk for a second about program outcomes and then celebrating this latest 28th year of SMART reading and where we're going this year. All right, so let's get started.
Sounds good.
Okay, so first up for us is a little bit of a conversation about Smarter Balanced, which is a report card, if you will, around how kids in Oregon are doing on a variety of measures. And we First, a little bit of background about Smarter Balance. Many of you may be familiar with that test, but many of you may not. But it is a fairly rigorous exam that's administered in the spring to students in 3rd through 8th grade and then juniors in high school. And it's covering a variety of topics: reading, writing, math, listening, research, and listening skills. So scores help determine how individual students are doing, but they also are an indicator about which schools are doing very well by their students and those that may need some additional support. It is, as I mentioned earlier, a pretty demanding test, and it's about 7 hours of questions, which are not all multiple choice. There's a lot of ways that students are interacting with this particular test. It does differ from the test that we used to offer in Oregon, which was the known in shorthand by OAKS, which is the Oregon Assessment of Knowledge and Skills. And several years ago, the standards around which students would be measured and the things that were being taught in schools changed. Therefore, the test changed as well. So here we are with Smarter Balance. Tamala, anything else you want to add about Smarter Balance before we dive into looking at how our kids are doing?
Well, I want to make sure that people understand that Smarter Balance is one data point and only one. And I kind of smiled when you said 7 hours, because indeed it is, but it's broken up. So we don't have the kids sit and just have to take that. It's pieces of it. We even separate. We have a test schedule at Rosa Parks. We do different days and break it up to where it's manageable. But it is still quite a rigorous exam.
And quite a different test from the earlier
and I think
right?
that we're right. One thing that I do like about it is that it gives, rather than just multiple choice, and maybe you guessed on the right answer, maybe you really knew it, but also the fact that there's writing, so it's interactive, so you're reading and then you're responding. And I think one of the things that we have an obligation to do in schools is to teach our kids how to think. So to read, to ponder, to think about, and then be able to convey that information to the person who's rating the exam. But most certainly that is a skill that they will use forever.
Definitely.
Yes,
right,
definitely.
Right.
I don't really care what kind of job or as you go on through college, university, you have an obligation. You will be called upon to respond. And writing is very important. So that is something I think is good, but I do want us to all remember it is one data point. And so as we are learning to give this test and our children are learning to take this test, we don't want to just put everything that if they don't do well, it means they're not smart. That's the furthest thing from the truth.
Right. But I do want to also piggyback on one of your comments about what's being tested here, what's being taught here, and according to and measured with Smarter Balance, are not just skills for school, but skills for life. And it's my understanding that this test, or actually the Common Core standards that preceded the test, were in part informed by the business community and expectations for young people coming out of college or coming out of high school and going into the work situation.
Exactly.
All right, so I do want to remind you that we're going to now flip to the slide here in just a second to take a look at how 3rd graders in Oregon fared on the Smarter Balance test. But there's a poll that's been up there on the screen that you can respond to. So if you want to put in a last minute, an answer to that, you got about 3 seconds here, 3, 2, 1, and then we're going on to the next slide so we can see how our 3rd graders did last year on the Smarter Balance. So, and we're looking here at 3rd grade students in reading results. And before we dive a little bit into these results, let's talk for a quick second about why 3rd grade reading and why we're measuring at that point. And the simple way that we'd often describe that here at SMART is that students in grades up to 3rd grade are reading to learn. But after 3rd grade, they're really reading to learn. So it really is sort of that pivot point, don't you think, Tamala?
Yes, so learning to read is prior to third grade, and then that's where the emphasis is in teaching young children how to read. And then when they hit third grade, they begin to read to learn. So, there's more independent reading. And of course, we may have students that aren't meeting that measure, and we have things in the school and opportunities for them to get better and to learn, because you have to know how to read.
I mean, it just gets more challenging after third grade.
Yeah,
and certainly life gets more challenging if
it
you're
does.
not able to read. So how do we do in Oregon? So you can see up there on the screen the results. All third grade students, the numbers that were reading proficiently are less than 50% at 46.5. And if you dive a little bit further down into those scores, you see that for certain categories of students, the results are even more challenging. So certainly students who are coming from economically disadvantaged household, Black African American students, Latinx students, Native American students, and English language learners struggling with the exam. I don't know, Tamala, does that sort of mirror what you were seeing at your school, or?
Yes, definitely that some of our subgroups, it was evident that we needed to be working harder, and we need to be finding the things that are going to help move them along. It doesn't mean the kids can't read. I have students that I know, unfortunately, didn't do well on the test, but they're great readers. So, you're trying to find, okay, so how are we setting up the test situation to make that comfortable and help them to take that serious? Some of us come from yesteryear when we just did, we marked the little dots, if you remember those, and basically, I remember making pictures, and some of my friends, so we weren't taking it serious. So helping students understand that it is serious to do their best. We want their best, because even if they're lacking, it still gives us information to know where the help is needed.
Right.
So that's important. I also had a question when looking at this data earlier, how many of our third grade students in the state of Oregon took the test? Because what I'm saying is that the higher the grades go, people are opting out.
Right.
And so actually third grade did very well. I think we had about 97% of the third graders in the state of Oregon took this particular test. And I think that's good. I think, and parents may, and definitely have the right to disagree with me, but I think if this is going to be a measure, a standard measure that we use from now through university, my niece just finished her residency after medical school, and I can't tell you the number of exams. And here's the deal, you don't pass the exam, you don't go on. So the reality of it is that unless something drastically changes, exams are kind of with us. So we want our kids to know how to take them, how to show up well. And that is our goal.
Right. But I am also reminded of your earlier comment about how these tests are really one indicator, one way that we understand how our kids are doing in school.
Because we have intermittent assessments, so we have other things that we're doing. We have an assessment called MAPS, for example, and we use that at the beginning of the year. We use it 3 times a year. So we don't just wait till the end of the year and do Smarter Balance.
Right.
Like we haven't done any. And then as well as teacher tests, and teachers are trying to design their tests more similar to how the Smarter Balance, right, is given, so that when kids see or have to respond to something, they're used to that. It's just like, oh yeah, I know how to do this.
Right.
And that's important too.
Right.
But again, one measure among several measures that we have as we look at kids and make sure that we're checking in on their progress.
And overall, I mean, it's a challenge, right? And there are a lot of students who need some support. And okay, let's take a look for a second then at how Oregon compares nationally. Now, this is not against Oregon and other states taking the Smarter Balance test, but this is a national comparison of Oregon and other students who are taking the National Assessment of Educational Progress, which we call NAEP, I would assume, since there's an acronym for everything. And this particular test is administered to 4th, 8th, and 12th graders on a sort of kind of regular basis. We were talking about that earlier, right?
We were.
How isn't it optional at some point?
Yes, and it's not every year, at least as I left, it hadn't been, but occasionally it would come up, and like fourth grade is not a year we look at. Eighth grade is, however.
Mhm.
So the off years is nice to have another form, of data.
Right.
But it is, it's a lot too.
A lot of
Think
testing,
about
yeah.
a lot of testing, because I think that's one of the things parents have concern is just maybe a little bit overboard on how much testing, what we're subjecting our kids through. And we don't want to do that either. We don't want them to be tested out and then, here comes another test. So,
Exactly, yeah.
you do this one, and that's a real concern. It's a concern among teachers as well as parents. And I'm sure the kids would agree. Because it gets a little much.
Right. And especially you hear so often about sort of teaching to the test. I mean, that in some ways, while it may support kids getting over that finish line on the test, it feels like it might actually narrow some of the opportunities for teaching in the classroom.
Yeah.
So if we look at the results for Oregon, well, we can see nationally 64% of fourth graders are reading below grade level, which is certainly challenging. And in Oregon, our students, 66% of our fourth graders are reading below grade level, so slightly fewer in Oregon, and then on the national scale. And Oregon's reading scores are lower than 30 other states, to pile on with the good news. Anything else we want to talk about in terms of that?
No, I think one of the things when we get data and we use data to help us, for example, there's money coming down the pipe now that we're all getting pretty excited about. And what kinds of things can we do? Because we definitely have to raise these scores. We weren't always down here within a national comparison, but we are now. So what are we going to do about it? And
and on that note, so we've talked about the challenge here in Oregon. No matter which test you're looking at and no matter who you're talking to, we want to encourage our students and get them so more of them are reading and reading well and reading happily. So let's talk, that's the challenge. So as we look now, as Tamala alluded to, there's some interesting and potentially amazing things that could happen here in Oregon. And this is a huge opportunity in front of us by way of the Student Success Act. Those of you who've been in education, and certainly those of you on the web, a lot of you on the webinar are volunteers or donors, members of the Smarty family may have been paying attention to this particular piece of legislation that was moving through the legislature last session. But it does offer an amazing opportunity for all of us. The Student Success Act is built on a House bill, for those of you who want to go look up the technical language, 3427. And that bill was long in the making, based on a lot of research and a lot of legislators who toured the state talking to people about what was needed in education in Oregon, where are the challenges in Oregon. And the measure will make a very, very significant financial investment in students in Oregon. When fully implemented, it will bring about $1 billion, yes, that's billion with a B, $1 billion into education on an annual basis. So where's all that money going to go? So the Student Success Act is divided up into 3 primary accounts. There some money's going to the state school fund, $200 million you can see up there. But other than that, the dollars are divided into 3 categories. One around early learning, which is really to support preschool and expansion of pre-K opportunities for students. Certainly anybody who's looked for those kinds of opportunities for kids know that there's no shortage, or there's no shortage of need in terms of pre-K for our youngest students, which is really the opportunity that kids need as they're getting prepared for kindergarten. There's a significant chunk of money going into the student investment account, roughly 50% of those, which I'm not a math genius, but by my calculations, that means roughly $500 million going into the student investment account. And in the statewide education initiatives, there'll be 30% going in there. And I'd like to talk for just a second about the student investment account, because there is so much money going into that, but there are also some really important aspects to how those dollars will be spent. And there are two primary categories and priorities for those dollars. And one is that the monies will be invested to meet the mental and behavioral health needs of students. And that is a really critical component. I'm going to turn to Tamala in a second, who can talk firsthand about the need for that. And then there's a requirement to increase the academic achievement for students and to reduce academic disparities for students who have historically been marginalized and left behind in our education system, if you will. And you can see there on the screen, we're trying to address the needs of kids of color, English language learners, economically disadvantaged students, students living in foster care, and students who are homeless. But Tamala, I know when you and I were talking earlier, we had an interesting conversation about that first priority, meeting both the mental and behavioral health needs of students. I wonder if you want to embellish on that.
Absolutely. It's a critical area. And in the years that I've been teaching in the classroom with a total of 36 years, boy, has that changed, and not for the better. Very concerned about some of our students, the traumas they're experiencing, which really, of course, we could talk about, oh, I didn't have breakfast. Well, now we have the breakfast program. We can do this. But we're talking about kids that are coming with mental health issues because of what they've experienced, whether it's some type of abuse, and we have the physical, we have sexual abuse, we also have, neglect or forms of abuse, but we also have kids that are living either with a relative placement, which we are so grateful for, because parents, I have more parents for my students who were incarcerated this past year, than ever before. And it's so painful to watch these kids not know what to do. And we're talking about K-5, so we're talking about little people. I had several of my students who one of the parents had been murdered or killed. And the kids come to school, it just breaks your heart. So much mental health. Sometimes mental health is genetic, and you see things, people with mental health disease, then raising children and not always having the support that they need to be successful. It's not that they can't do it, but they need some supports around them. But that's a big one. And I think we're starting to understand that we need to have, for example, mental health providers in the school, that parents maybe can come to school, children can be seen at school, you don't have to take them out, you don't have to get them somewhere, they can get the services they need right there. And then that gives us another person that when we are worried about kids or we see that they're going through something, then we also look at them as a partner to say, okay, they're really struggling. What could we be doing differently? And we partner together with that. So we need more of that. We need more counselors. My counselor is busy. I mean, sometimes, I remember last year, I'd have to make an appointment with her. And she'd say, oh yeah, I forgot. Or a child would come in and something had happened that morning, and children first. That's the Rosa Parks way, children first. So if the child needs you, then we'll reschedule this. We can do that. But that's a real big concern. And I think there's some ways that the school districts across the state can really show up for kids. And I know they want to do that because we've started, but it has to be funded.
Well, it's interesting too, I was having a conversation with somebody who said something to me that just really resonated and brought into into perspective some of the challenges that we're seeing in school today. And if you think about the Great Recession, that was 10 years ago, roughly, a little bit more than that now. So, and there were so many people who lost jobs, and children who watched their parents lose their jobs, or parents who've been worried about where am I going to get that next meal. And that's traumatic for kids. So 10 years ago, now those are the kids who are in our elementary schools today. So it just really, for me, highlighted the incredible need that our kids have.
Exactly. And kids are very resilient, but there's just some things that, as it happens in life and society, we're not necessarily prepared to address those things with our kids, or we don't know how, and how deeply it will affect kids. Homelessness is, that's one of the areas that they will be looking at finding some more academic support in homelessness. As we know in our city, I grew up in Portland. I've never seen it like this, and it just breaks my heart because on the way here this morning, I saw someone riding a bike with their child, and just from the direction they were coming and the appearance, I felt like, I wonder, is that mom getting her baby to school on the bike, like a preschool? Um, but she looked like it was a possibility, not to make judgment, but that she could have been homeless. But we do have parents. We have parents who are with their children and in homeless situations and living either couch surfing, staying with relatives, splitting up their families so that, you keep this one and I'll keep this one with me. Husband and wives who can't be together, mothers and fathers who can't be together because that particular housing doesn't allow for that. So kids come to school with all that.
Right.
And we see those effects. And it's important to have some of these things in place in terms of mental health or just supports. And that can look so many different ways. One of the things that I'm happy is that the districts are reaching out to communities. I know Portland is holding meetings to get input. And that's what you need. I can sit here and tell you what you need, but that hasn't been my journey. So really, I can't sit here and tell you what you need. I need you to tell me what you need and how I can show up for you and your family.
Well, and that's I think one of the things that's been nicely built into this whole process with the student investment account. The districts have to actually apply for funding. It's not a competitive grant process, but they do have to apply. But one of the things that they have to do is this needs assessment. So engage the community and find out and talk to parents. What do your kids really need in our school, and to then create as much of a holistic opportunity as they can. And actually, that's a part where SMART is trying to feed in, because we all know we do good stuff for kids. So we're engaging now with districts across the state to have some conversations about ensuring that our services are built into their early literacy efforts.
And I think also that after school, changing the look of the day and maybe the year, and it's no secret that I am a proponent of year-round school, and I'm not going to go into that, but I truly believe in that. I believe that we have to, we can't be doing things like we did it 200 years ago.
Right.
I mean, really, we've got to change up maybe how we do school and what that really looks like, and how long is the day, and how long do children stay at school. I think about doing the World War II, when Vanport was open and the Kaiser shipyards were in full operation. They had 24-hour daycare. Why? Because they needed it so parents could work the shifts.
Yeah.
So you got to respond. So I'm hoping parents will really take this and come out and let people know, let the people know that are putting this plan together so their voice can be heard.
So in terms of meeting the needs and making changes to education, let's move now and talk a little bit more about SMART specifically. So we know many of our viewers today have certainly been around our organization for a while, but I want to remind us all of some of our underpinnings. I think it is part of what has led to our success and our longevity, is that we have never veered off of what I like to call sort of our North Star. We have always been committed to supporting our state's youngest students, and for us that is now pre-K to third grade, as they begin to learn to read. And likewise, we have always been built around and built on two foundational pieces and a model that hasn't changed. So we are built very specifically on two research-based elements that support early literacy, and those are shared reading time and access to books. So hence the one-on-one time of those amazing volunteers who participate with us, and the thousands of books that get distributed every year through SMART. But we have, as a partner, always been focused on how do we provide those services in the ways that are most relevant and keep pace with what's going on in education? So I want to turn now to a little bit of a timeline for SMART, and there's a lot of detailing in here. So let me point out a couple of things before we dive into some of our program specifics. Up at the top, you'll see two curvy lines there that go up and down with the years. The line on the top is an indicator of the number of students that we have served, and the line just below that are the number of volunteers who have participated with us. So you'll see some climb up into that 11,000 student zone, and then some diving down, and now some climbing back up. So we, like many organizations, have had some challenges over the years. It won't surprise anybody to know that some of the dip came in around the Great Recession and the year leading up to that. So it certainly was a financially challenging one for us, and a structurally challenging one for us as well. But throughout, we kept, at the forefront our interest in serving as many kids as we could. And thank you to all of our volunteers who hung with us during that. And we're happy to say that we're climbing right back up, over the last several years. One other line I will point out, and our development folks would love me to say this, that green line across the bottom is the cost for providing SMART. So we generally look at the cost of the program on a per child basis. So it's $325 per child over the course of the year, and that figure has pretty much stayed the same. This chart is going back about 10, a little bit more years than that. So I would challenge any of you to find a product today that's available at the price today that it was 10 years ago, but SMART is. All right, so let's talk for a second about some of our efforts over the years to nuance our program to both be reflective of research, new findings via research, changes in the school day or in the school setting, and our interest in continuing to serve as many students as we can. So I'm going to turn to Kendra, our silent partner today, I'm sorry, to describe for you a couple of the nuances that we've made to the program.
Yeah, sure. So I'll start maybe chronologically. You can see there at the bottom that one of the newer additions in the past was the pre-K model and Head Start model. And so we will go into pre-K and Head Start classrooms and actually push into the classroom, or maybe right outside in the hallway of the classroom, and then be able to serve all the kids in the classroom. And so our volunteers come and they still commit to that same 1 hour a week, but they're reading with 4 little kiddos, so they get 15 minutes with each child, and you can do a lot in 15 minutes. You'd be surprised. Yes. People say just 15 minutes, but actually 15 minutes you can get through 2 or 3 of our pre-K Head Start books. You can have them write their name on the sticker and put it in their giveaway book. And so it has a lot of similarities to our standard model, but it is a really positive program model to serve all the kids in the classroom, and that way no child misses out on SMART. Similar to the pre-K, moving forward, we started a K-SMART model, and so that model also would serve the entire classroom, and then we read with kids for 20 minutes. So they're a little bit older, we read with them a little bit longer, and so as a volunteer, you still commit to 1 hour a week, and then you're reading with 3 kids in those 20-minute time slots. We do have some K-SMART models that are flexible, because SMART is flexible. So sometimes we might also still pull kids out of the classroom for that model, depending on what the principal has asked and what the teachers want. And so we're always flexible. The final model there at the end, it says OST model, which stands for out of school time. And so that is our newest model, and we've been doing some pilot projects, and a lot of those pilot projects have been taking place in northeast Portland, which is the area that I am in charge of. And so I've had a fun time getting to know the programs and helping out supporting this new model. And so a couple examples of OST out of school time are our after school programs, where we partner a lot of times with the Sun after school program to move into the after school time. We also partner with some great community organizations, and for example, Bridge Meadows and Portland Tennis and Education, and Hacienda Say They Say are 3 in Northeast Portland that we're currently partnering with and piloting programs. And so you can see up on the screen there, the 2 top pictures are from the Bridge Meadows program, which is an intergenerational community organization. And so we have families that are fostering or in the process of adopting children living in communities with single elders. And so the elders are built right there into the community are our volunteer readers. And the kids within the community are the smarty kids. And so what's great and what we see happening there is this connection between the elders and the younger kids and an opportunity to spend that one-on-one time with them that wasn't maybe there before. And then in addition with SMART, of course, they're getting books. And another very positive thing about the OST model is that because they may not be as consistent as when they're in the school time, they are receiving books once a week. And so they get a larger collection of books by the end, which is great. And I've heard directly from the Bridge Meadows director, the elders, the families, that this has really provided something that was lacking at Bridge Meadows as far as providing the connection when kids come in and they're new to the community. They can get that one-on-one time and kind of break out of their shell by spending time with the elders and reading with them. So that's been a really great program. The bottom 2 pictures there are from the Portland Tennis and Education program in St. John's. And that's an amazing organization that provides tennis coaching for kids and also life skills and tutoring for the kids. And so SMART came in about a year and a half ago now and started reading with the children. They are 80% bilingual students in the program and 90%, a little over 90% students of color. And so we're coming in with bilingual books in Spanish, and we're providing as many bilingual volunteers as we can also to read with the kids. And they're very excited about the Spanish books. You know, so that's something that we hear that's a little different than our standard programs in the school, is that this is a community organization that is working mostly with Latino families, and they are prideful of their culture and of their language within the community, and they support that. And so the staff is mostly bilingual as well, and so the kids are excited to take the Spanish books, and those are the ones they're reading, and those are the ones that they're choosing to take on giveaway days, which is really exciting.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and then I'll just mention Hacienda Say They Say, our newest partner, and we started a pilot program with them last year for about 8 weeks, and so we're continuing on this year, and we're reading with an after-school program, and again, bilingual volunteers and bilingual books, and it's been very successful. And so we're excited to continue to expand on the OST program and provide this kind of program and partner with community partners outside of the school district as well. So,
I mean, that's one of the things I love about the OST model, especially the portion of that we call Community Smart, you know, in partnership with another not-for-profit, but actually taking our program to another place, yes, like Bridge Meadows. So we're actively engaging folks who are living in that community in the program.
And I'm not sure if you realize, but Bridge Meadows is built on the former John Ball site.
Right. Yeah.
So when I think about as a place of learning and growing, students are still there.
Right.
And I really support that program. I think it's a wonderful model. So that's what we're talking about, doing things. You don't have to just keep doing it, like expand,
right,
think outside of the box.
Right. Well, and with that particular model too, and the other OST programs, we're certainly engaging more kids, but we're also inviting in adult volunteers to the program who were not engaged with us before. And I don't know, Kendra, what you hear, or Tamala, what you've heard from volunteers, but I certainly have a lot of them say to me, you know, I wanted to get engaged and do a little bit of smart reading because I wanted to give back and be engaged with kids in my community, but boy, I got as much out of it as the kids did.
Yeah, very true.
Okay, so that's some of the work that we've been doing. Let's talk for a second then about outcomes. You know, we think about our mission and our work. I think it feels natural to say kids, books, someone reading with kids. Wow, that's good stuff. We know that intrinsically that's good work. But we do get the question a lot. Yeah, this is wonderful that you're reaching all these kids and you're giving out all those books, but how do you know that it works? So we've done a lot of work to mark and measure our proof points, as I like to think about them, and we'll show you a couple of them now. So we gather feedback in a couple of different ways here on an annual basis. One is by surveying our family members, educators, so teachers and principals, and our volunteers, and asking for input on the program. And we use that data not only so we can say, hey, we're so great in all these ways, but also as a feedback opportunity so that we can understand ways that we can continue to improve on the program. And here's just a couple of samples of what we found and the feedback that's been shared with us. 93% of our educators said that SMART contributed significantly to reading motivation and enjoyment for their students, which is, as we know, what we're all about. We want kids to be excited and joyful and feeling confident about reading. 97% of our parents or guardians agreed that their children benefited from the SMART program. And then 85% of parents or guardians said their children demonstrated improved reading as a result of participating in the SMART program. So any other comments we want to add to that? That's one way that we look at input that we get on the program. The other thing that we're doing, a new slide. I forgot we added this slide. So if you want additional indication of what parents are thinking about our program, we do get a lot of input by way of the survey. Up here on the screen are a couple of examples of what parents have had to say about our program. So you can read those. I mean, one of them is quite long, but I love the part that we've highlighted there. Through SMART, she had someone giving her extra attention, and it made all the difference for her. Her reading and love of reading greatly improved. And that's from a parent of a child at Centennial Elementary School in Eugene. And then we had a parent from Menlo Park Elementary in Portland talk about this program. I'm glad this program is going 19 years later. I learned to read because of this program, which means that student was in our program.
Yes.
One of our wonderful alums, as we call them. It gave me a nostalgic feeling enrolling my daughter into this program. I'm so happy it's still around. And speaking of alums, we're really excited about the fact that we've been around long enough now that we do hear from many of them, and we've got over 200 of them that are currently signed up as readers in the program. All right, so now we can move on to the other data slide. The other way that we measure our program is we're asking teachers on an annual basis to take a look back at the students who were in the program and to report out to us on a number of variables that are indicators of literacy and reading success. So a couple of those numbers up here on the screen. 85% of SMART students consistently showed improvement in measures of reading motivation and enjoyment, which we know are strongly correlated with reading performance. I think that must have something to do with the more you like it, the more motivated you are to do it, the better you get. But I keep telling myself when I'm practicing that violin, the more I do it, the better I'll get. 91% of SMART students showed improved confidence in their reading skills. And again, that's really what we're about, is wanting kids to feel excited about reading and confident about reading. And 82% of SMART students showed improvement in social and emotional skills. Back to some of what we were talking about earlier.
Right.
Yeah. So I don't know, Tamala, does that, these are the numbers that we're gathering. I think you as a principal who's watched the program may have things to share about that.
That and the volunteers that return year after year. And the teachers are excited when it's SMART time and they need to meet with the SMART coordinator and get their times of when their kids are going to be pulled. There's so much to do in a given day, but SMART has been between our old school Rosa Parks and then our old school John Ball and now Rosa Parks, 28 years, because it actually started at John Ball.
Right.
And I was in the classroom at that time, and I had the 4th and 5th graders, so my children didn't get to participate, and I was a little bit jealous. Because, it's wonderful. Kids are going somewhere. They're excited. They're happy to see their reader coming to get them. There is no pressure. It's like they don't make mistakes. They don't do anything wrong. They're enjoying and learning to love reading. And as their skills grow, of course, they're able to do more and more reading, shared reading, rather than being read to, which is, how it starts pretty much in kindergarten, and he was from first grade. But it's just, I told someone recently, there's not one negative that I can think of. We just want, do a little plug for volunteers. So if you have a friend or you know somebody, because the more volunteers we have, the more children we serve. And when our numbers are up, we usually set a goal with our smart person comes in, and we sit down and we say, well, how many kids are we going to try to serve? But then we can't do that if we don't have enough volunteers. So, when you think of an hour a week and what it really can do based on these students, and then a parent who was a smart student, you can see it matters. It goes a long way. And I know they have countless statements like this that people give feedback. So these are just a couple. But if you know somebody and they're looking for something to do, and I think Chris is right when she says, they say it means as much, and I know you would agree too, that it means as much to you. Maybe you can get more out of it than you can necessarily tell. Sometimes kids don't let you know, but I can tell you they're excited.
See, this is why our principals are our favorite, and we love our advocates for our program. So thank you for that infomercial. We appreciate that. Yes. So there's just a couple of other quotes up here one from a teacher at Chavez Elementary in Eugene, and another one from a teacher at Lincoln Elementary in Corvallis. And I do want to add one other thing. So you mentioned John Ball and being a teacher there. And what you didn't say is that on our board of directors right now is one of the students who was actually one of the first kids in SMART at John Ball. So the world is a circular deal. Things come back.
And I taught him. So that makes it extra special to me to see that he's continuing the good work. You're not supposed to have favorites, and I don't, of course. But when I see young people come through, and about 4th and 5th grade is when you begin to really see their ideas, and you just kind of know that some of these kids are gonna do well and go far in life. We want that for all of our students, and so it's our job to make sure we prepare them to have choices. But Jamel's a special young man. Yeah.
I'm going to tell him that when I see him.
Yes, please.
All right. So let's look at where we're going this year. So as we celebrate this 28th year of SMART in the 2019-20 school year, 11,000 students, although we're going to be a little over that, right, Kendra?
Exactly.
11,000 and beyond in 300 programs around the state. So we're right now in 28, it might even be 29 of our 36 counties, spreading out as much as we can. We will give away 145,000 new books. In fact, I'm told we're getting very close to that 3 millionth book mark. And think about that. That's a ton of books. And we'll have 5,000 volunteers who are joining us. So and the work absolutely does not get done without those volunteers. So we're excited about that. If you want to take a look at where we are around the state, this is a map. There's a legend on the left side of the screen there that'll gives you some indication of actually our need in terms of volunteers. So to Tamala's point, many of our programs, some of our programs with the green dots actually are full in terms of volunteers, but you can see there's a lot of opportunity around the state. So if you are looking for an opportunity and a wonderful hour in your week, feel free to plug into one of those. Let's see, what else should I tell you about that? Well, we'll be showing this map in the future. This is where we are right now, but just a little teaser for an upcoming webinar later in the spring about where we're headed over the next 5 to 7 years. And you'll see that map get a few more dots on that. All right, so let's now go to, Q&A. All right, and I think we actually do have some questions. My eyes aren't good enough to read those, so.
Well, and thank you everyone so much for joining us today and for submitting your questions via the chat box. Our first question here, I believe, is in relation to one of those first charts that we were comparing national data, Oregon compared nationally. And the question is, how do these comparisons rank when compared to the reading scores, say, in the 1970s?
I'm going to defer to...
Well, I don't think we have that data. unfortunately. But I can tell you that one of the things to remember is how we look at students today with the rigor has gone up. So what we used to expect students to be able to do, I don't know how old you are, but if you think about kindergarten, I remember even when I started teaching as a kindergarten, I would tell you I was in kindergarten in the 70s, but that's not true. But I will, in all honesty, I think the rigor has gone up. We have changed the standards. And so what we expect kids to be able to do and what we're teaching them to do and what kids are learning to do is so different that the comparison, even if you had numbers, you wouldn't be comparing apples to apples. You'd be comparing apples to
Tangerine.
cucumbers. It's just that different. And several times when I was still in the classroom and outside when I became an administrator, we saw the rigor change. We saw the standards change. And so as a result, the instruction needed to change and we need to move that up. Kindergarten now looks, in some kindergartners, the rigor is so high and they do wonderful things. But remember back in the day, it was half a day, there was a play part, and if you were whole day, you took a nap, like you don't see that and anymore. And you can walk in and kids are learning and they're writing. And so we have kids that can almost program computers at 5 years old. And
they're reading too.
They're reading.
Oh, absolutely. That I read with, and they may not be at the beginning of the year, but they are by the end of the year.
We have kindergartners that come to school reading. And then most certainly a number learn to read throughout the year. And so the standard is just different, the expectations different.
All right, and what's our next question?
Perfect. Our next question is about the state level and school district specifically. What more could be done to see in the school district level if there is a correlation between students in SMART and graduation rates?
Well, that's been a tough one. I mean, ideally, we'd love to be able to say that these students who are in SMART and then look at their graduation rate. We even find, though, on an annual basis, as we're trying to tease out results just based on the milestone form that we're using and how those results show, it's difficult to isolate our contribution against other variables that are going on. What we have, and we definitely have debated in our organization around the board table about the opportunity to do a sort of return on investment study. And the challenge there again is how do we isolate the contributions that we're making against and control for all the other variables. So what we have actually used as sort of our guiding star is there's plenty of research that will point to if children get to third grade and are reading successfully by third grade, that the trajectory towards graduation and then success after graduation is markedly different than if you're not reading on grade level. So that's what we've tied our work to. I don't know, Tamala, do you have anything else you would add to that?
You said it very well, because third grade is that indicator, and we look at that and we know that the kids, because you don't unlearn to read.
Right.
So once you learn to read and you enjoy reading and you're reading now to learn rather than being just taught how to read, that really changes things. Because people say, well, why? If they're not reading in third grade, they can't learn later. They absolutely can. And we do teach kids. Sometimes we get students and they come to us and they're fourth or fifth grade. And so we then look at our resources that we have and then we start putting that in. But would you like to go somewhere every day where you weren't successful or didn't feel good? And if I don't feel like I can do what my peers are doing, it's easy to just like school less and less. And once we get to that, it's hard to turn that around. So we really want to do these kinds of things, SMART and other programs that we have. We want to do them early and often, get the kids invested in their education. It's the only way they're going to be successful.
Our next question, which we hear quite often, is how are students referred to the SMART program?
So, well, how about you take
Oh,
that,
yeah,
Kendra?
sure, I
You're
can
actually
take
on the
that.
ground
Yeah.
doing all that.
It does kind of go back to the different models, right? So pre-K and K-Smart models, all kids are being served, so they don't need to be selected. And then the OST models also, as I talked about Bridge Meadows and Portland Tennis and Education, we're actually aiming to serve also all the kids within that program that meet our age range, and we're doing so. So we kind of look back at that standard model, and it's up to the teachers. We provide the teachers with what we call our selection form, and they get to choose the kids that participate in the program. We definitely give them some guidelines as to what children would be best suited for the program, and that could be, kids that just need more access to books, kids that need that one-on-one time with an adult, and kids that are reading above or below their reading level, because even if they're reading above that reading level, they're getting that one-on-one time and that opportunity to do so with an adult. So those are the options that we give the teachers, and they ultimately select the kids that participate.
Did your teachers have?
Our teachers do, and they're looking for students that we know, maybe they're, it's English as a second language, let's look at that group of students. And maybe mom and dad are learning to speak English, but they definitely don't read it yet, read or write it. So those students need to hear it because their first language at home, which is very important. And we want them to have that to bring with them through to school and through life. But if you're not hearing it and you're not exposed to it, sometimes it's hard to pick up. So of course, we want those students. And I would say at Rosa Parks, we try to get, if we could do all of our students, we would.
Yeah.
We just would. Because the kids who you say, oh, they're fine because they love reading, they always have books. We know that there are books in the home based on what a parent has shared or the kids have shared. I have a book out of the library. But they still, to have a one-on-one time and to be able to see so many rich, you all do such an amazing job of selecting books that are out there for the kids. And the kids identify with a lot of the books because of the time that's taken for the culturally specific children. They gravitate when they see themselves. Who doesn't?
Right.
We do that. And so when I think about making sure that we can provide this, and I love the fact that kindergarten, all the students get that, because it's real hard for them to understand, how come you're going to school? So, we have that too. And then the smart tutors that come back and they work with that child year after year, that has been a very powerful model, because they actually see that growth and they see how the child is growing and developing, and that's another cheerleader for that student.
Yeah.
Well, and to your point about the one-on-one opportunity, I mean, I've had certainly teachers and principals say to me, we love what SMART is doing and books for kids and that additional time spent reading and just enjoying books, but that one of the most important things that you're doing is providing that adult who's coming just to spend time with them, same day, same time, all of that.
And the kids depend and expect that.
Right.
And
they notice when we're not there.
They do. They absolutely do.
Do we have time for one more question, I think, before we?
I think we have time for
round it
one
in?
quick question that flows directly into our next slide, which is get involved. So we have a submission here about that they heard about this program from a friend, but I never saw a flyer or another ad. Would we ever consider putting these up in places like churches or senior centers?
This is tailor-made for you.
I know, yes. Oh, okay, yeah, absolutely we would consider, and we do that. Unfortunately, we can't be everywhere all the time, but summertime is a high recruitment period for us because we don't have a lot of programs open. So I work directly with churches, with retirement centers. We have a great partnership with Holiday Park Plaza where we have a lot of volunteers out in the community reading. I'll do presentations at churches, flyers of libraries. SMART also does a really great job of getting involved with the community as far as cultural events. We're at Latino Cultural Festival, Movies in the Park, which will be hosted by different organizations. So we partner with Black Parent Initiative and Movies in the Park over the summer. And a lot of farmers markets. Out at the farmers market, if you go out during the summertime, we'll be out there. So we really do try and hit a variety of spots for recruitment of volunteers But, the more the better that we can do that.
And our volunteers are often our best
Yeah.
recruiters too. And like I've talked to somebody who said, oh yeah, my neighbor told me about this, or somebody at work told me about that. So tell your friends. Ways to get involved, first and foremost, volunteer. The programs are all opening this month for the most part, and the number of kids that we serve is directly dependent on the number of folks that we have who say, pick me, I want to get involved. So feel free to chime in. It's easy to go on our website and to take a look at actually where all the sites are. You saw the map. It's interactive when you're online, and there's a drop-down menu. You can look at the different schools in a particular area, pick one that's close to you, and we're happy to sign you up. Other ways that you can get involved, you might ask, you could make a gift. Remember that $325 price that has not changed over the last probably 10 years or more? That's the cost of providing service for a kid for a year in SMART. $40 will make sure that a student gets those 14 brand new books that they get to pick out and take and keep forever. And you can join a rather new endeavor for us, which is the SMART Book Club, which is our monthly giving program. I feel like I'm OPB right now. Join that SMART Book Club and be a monthly giver to SMART. And of course, encourage your friends and your family members and your colleagues and everyone you know to get involved in the program. One last thing I want to say in terms of getting involved. Sitting at the table with us is certainly my colleague, Kendra, who I enjoy very much. One of my favorite principals, Tamala Newsome. You have just been such a huge champion for our work forever. So thank you for that. Thank you for participating in this webinar. And we have a gift for you. I have a copy for you of Oregon Reads Aloud. So on our 25th anniversary, we thought, what should we do to mark our anniversary? And because we do books, we did a book. So this book is a collection of 25 read-aloud stories, all written by Oregon authors and illustrated by Oregon authors, and handwritten with notes of thank you from those of us at SMART. So thank you, Tamala.
What an honor. Thank you. It's my privilege.
And one last thing, thank you to all of you for staying with us today and joining us. We'd love to stay in touch with you, so you can see up on the screen there the email addresses for me and Kendra and Afrida, who was with us earlier. Tamala, we did not want to put your contact information up there. Didn't know that you want to be inundated with questions or emails from members of the SMART family. But anyway, feel free to contact any of us or visit us on our website to learn more about SMART reading. So again, thank you for joining us. Over and